Hi everyone, it's Ajanette Oberg and I'm here to go over your Chapter 11 lecture. So Chapter 11 is covering motivation, which is looking at those things that might encourage us to action or push us to action that might cause us to continue to persist in a behavior. And specifically, motivation quite often looks at how do we behave in terms of our goals. How are we actively pursuing our goals? So there are various theories of motivation, including the instinct theory of motivation. So suggesting that our behaviors are instinctive, we're born with them, we don't have to physically learn them or be taught them, but rather we have this inner drive that compels us, and it's universal to everyone in the species. And so not all behaviors are necessarily universal, and so not all behaviors are, although there are many, many, many instincts, not all of our human behavior can be classified as instincts. Additionally, there's drive reduction theory, which talks about how we have this drive that kind of builds up, or this physiological need that builds up inside of us, and consequently we are compelled or pushed toward satisfying that need, maybe hunger, maybe a sex drive, something of that nature. Additionally, arousal theory suggests that there's this maximum, or excuse me, not maximum, optimal level of arousal that we should be at. If we're not aroused enough, we're not motivated to take action. And if our arousal level is too high, we may have exceeded the right threshold in order to behave or act on that motivation in a productive, successful way. And so there are certain things that are arousing to us. One of those is curiosity toward complex and novel things. And by novel, we mean new, but we are kind of compelled to understand or to be drawn towards something new. And that might influence our behavior or our interest in any given behavior as well. Okay, so let's go over the theories a little bit. Drive reduction theory operates from a starting point of homeostasis, and homeostasis is when our body's just in balance biologically. We have that equilibrium, whether it's between our sugar levels are properly in balance, or our pH levels versus our acid levels are properly in balance. And whenever we kind of, that teeter-totter tips and we fall out of balance, then we start to have this biological need, like I'm thirsty and I'm tipping, I haven't received enough water, so I'm tipping, and now my fluid levels are out of balance. And so I have a thirst that starts to develop and I need that water. And as that need arises, now I'm going to be driven to do something to respond to it. So the need creates a drive where now I have this really uncomfortable tension because I'm feeling my mouth a little bit dry and cottony. I can't focus and concentrate. I really need to get some water. And so now I'm motivated to satisfy that drive, and it's going to now influence my behavior. I'm going to take action to meet that need, and I'm going to actually take my cup and take a drink. And now I've satisfied that need, so the drive is reduced. I'm no longer thirsty, and I can be restored back into homeostasis, or that balance point. And so drive reduction theory again suggests that when we're out of balance, we are pushed toward behavior and action in order to fulfill that need. Arousal theory, as I mentioned, arousal can often refer to our state of alertness, our state of arousal, and obviously we can be completely asleep to completely actively involved. And so those are kind of the two end points of our arousal. Completely asleep, so we're not aroused at all, to completely active and engaged and alert. And then we can kind of be so high-strung that we're no longer alert and functional and somewhat like a manic state where you're over aroused and over active and your heart's racing. And so arousal theory suggests that we cannot operate in the extremes. We are most efficient when we're in that optimal range, when we are peaking intellectually, but we're not overstimulated that our brain can't focus. Because sometimes we can be such heightened energy levels, we need to calm ourselves down, such as maybe taking an exam. So take, for instance, if I'm motivated to stay in this optimal range and my performance is not going to do well here or here. So let's say I'm taking an exam, I'm late for the exam, I get stuck on the freeway, I get a flat tire, I fix the tire. I'm definitely alert, I'm aroused, right? I'm not sleeping. And then I'm now running to class. I come to class and I'm not only beyond my optimal level, I'm now in this kind of manic state. If I were falling asleep during class while I was trying to take my exam, I wouldn't do well. And if I come running in from a major catastrophe on an exam date, and I'm so hyperstimulated, my blood pressure is going, my heart is racing, and my breathing is rapid, then my arousal is such that it definitely has pushed me over the point of efficiency. So arousal theory suggests I'm going to do well when I'm right in that middle optimal threshold. Sensation seeking is also kind of connected to arousal and motivation. What motivates people to seek out thrill and adventure? And sensation seekers are individuals who are thrill seekers. They're your daredevils. They're the ones that are bungee jumping or rock climbing or skydiving, although I do want to go skydiving soon. But they're really seeking out the experience. They enjoy that adventure. They enjoy the stimulation. And they don't have this inhibition that you and I might have that's kind of fear-based. They are very disinhibited, where they don't have that fear and that barrier. They just go for things and they dive into things. And so, some people might look at them as crazy, like you're completely crazy to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Some people might look at them as, wow, I wish I had that sense of adventure. But there are some downsides, and they can become bored very easily. And so we want to be mindful of that, especially like in relationships. Somebody that's a sensation seeker, pairing up with someone like me who's like a couch potato, that can be problematic. But I love my Law and Order, and I love to sit around during the weekends, and I love to watch TV. So for a sensation seeker that likes to be, living a thrilling, exhilarating life, that could be a problem. Or to sit in a classroom all day for hours upon hours, lecturing or hearing that boring, tedious lecture, that could be a problem. So they might need to space out their classes, maybe only do 1.5-hour class at a time. Shouldn't probably never take a 3-hour class together. Should probably never take a 4 to 6 hour class. But they should probably look at it being broken up in chunks, because it's really hard to maintain attention and focus during such a long, kind of boring interval. So let's look at some other theories of motivation. There is a psychosocial theory of motivation that talks about incentives, where we now have an incentive, something outside of us in our environment that is pulling us. So remember that drive reduction theory is inside of us, it's internal, and it's pushing us. Incentive theory suggests that it's like the carrot hanging in front of you that's pulling you and motivating you to keep going. And that's what we call an extrinsic reward. It's something outside of you. It's an incentive. And then there's also a cognitive theory that really looks at how do we individually interpret particular situations, reward, goals, our expectations, what we believe will happen when we engage in a particular behavior will be motivating for us. For me, I know if I work hard and I study the material, I expect that I'm going to do well on it. I know I believe myself to be a good student. I have certainly transcripts to demonstrate my competency as a student. And I believe my interpretation of the student environment is it's my responsibility, that the student bears responsibility for how well they're learning the material. And if they're not learning the material well, then they need to seek out support and resources. Ideally, that's coming to their professor. And if that's not the case, it's going to the Learning Resource Center. It's going to tutoring. It's talking to friends. It's creating study groups. But you are personally making things happen. But if I didn't have those belief systems or those interpretations of situations, then maybe I wouldn't be motivated to act in the way that I do. If I believe that my grade were in the hands of my teacher, let's say, and they give me an A as opposed to I earn an A, then maybe I might behave differently. If I believe the test was hard or, that kind of stuff, maybe I'll believe differently. So definitely our thought processes and our personal interpretations and beliefs are going to influence our behavior and our motivation levels. Okay, so some biopsychosocial theories is we have to think about, for years we used to debate, are we born that way? Or, does our environment make us that way? And really now we have an ability to look at them working together. Maybe we are born with some biological predispositions or some certain traits or characteristics or interests. Our psychological interpretations, such as with the cognitive theory, matter. And then our social environment and circumstances might influence how we might act on those things as well. So many theories now allow for nature and nurture interactions and how they both contribute to our outcomes and our behaviors. Abraham Maslow really talks about the hierarchy of needs, and he is probably the most famous theorist when it comes to motivation theory. He talks about our motivation is based on how we prioritize needs, and that there's a sense of urgency depending upon the type of need, and that certain needs need to be met in order for us to be compelled or motivated to achieve other needs that may not be as high of a priority. And he suggested that we're all moving up what he called this hierarchy of needs toward self-actualization. And self-actualization is this, we're becoming all that we're capable of becoming. We're reaching our full potential. We're aspiring toward, self-fulfillment. And that threshold might be different for everybody, but it's our own inner greatness, so to speak. But we have to first move through the priority. We have to have our physiological needs met. If we're hungry or thirsty and we don't have that homeostasis in our body, we cannot be compelled to fully paying attention. Let's just use a classroom experience. When my stomach's going, rah, 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 I'm dying of thirst and I'm so parched that I have cotton mouth and it's uncomfortable for me, I can't pay attention and concentrate in class. So I'm not getting the lecture materials. So I need that physiological need met. I need that homeostasis met before I can truly function. Safety needs, I have to feel safe and secure. If I have a saber-toothed tiger jumping out at me, there is no way I'm going to be able to concentrate on class, even with a full belly. Like, I'm going to get the hell out of there. So once I have my physiological needs met, my safety needs met, then I want to be part of a group. We are social creatures. We need to feel like we belong. We need to feel like we are connected to others. And we need that kind of social acceptance. We need that affection. We need that contact with other human beings. Once I have that contact and connection, I need to feel like I'm esteemed or valued. I need to know that they believe me to be competent and capable and they approve of me. And only when I have all those other levels achieved can I truly achieve self-actualization. So Maslow's talking about there's this priority that influences our motivation to act. And I'll come back to this and talk about some critiques of his theory in just a moment.